Hi everyone. I recently moved out of my hometown and into a studio unit. Sorry for the noise. I'm running the laundry machine right now. But as I was saying, I moved out to a studio unit here, as seen in this video. And I just want to talk about how everything looks really nice, looks clean, but I have some critiques about it, and I'm gonna go through that in this video just to give other people different ideas to think about when they're figuring out what space is gonna work well with themselves. Everyone has their own preferences, and this is just a video to give you ideas. So one of the biggest problems I have with this unit is angled handles. You can see that this is like a rectangle, and it gets very sharp in this corner and the top corner, and actually all four corners are very sharp. And there has been a couple times where I've walked into it with my knee. You could see my knee height is right at the second one, and I walked into it, scraped it myself, and I've done it a couple times. And so it is quite annoying to have something sharp, and especially if you're renting out, if you're renting a unit with children or other people, this can be quite a hazardous thing to have. I personally would change it immediately, but this is not my unit, so I can't really touch it. And they seem to have it at every single cabinet that has a handle. So these are square as well. Not a big fan of it. These are square as well. Not a big fan of it. So that's the first thing I would change. And this is also very common. I guess this is their design that they've done is square everything or rectangle everything. So, oops, it's kind of dirty here. Don't worry about that. But also you can see with this faucet, it is also rectangle and very sharp. It's actually very sharp to touch. And there's a couple times where I've turned on the water and I put my hand to wash, and I scraped this meaty portion of my palm right onto this thing, and it's like, ow! So I'm not a fan of this faucet as well. So no, I don't like any sharp corners. And speaking of faucets, the other problem I have with the faucet is this kitchen faucet. There's a double sink here, and there's a kitchen faucet here, but the thing about this faucet is when you turn on the water, you could see how the whole sink is here, but the water ends up all the way in the far corner, which is not very great because typically, I mean, when you wash something, you might have to lean over a bit, but I have to lean over a little bit extra just to get to that corner. I feel like this faucet the water should maybe aim closer to the middle of the sink, so that's a little bit more ergonomic. It's not, that's another thing I would change. Is it a deal breaker? Yes, it's up to your personal preference. So that's a thing that I don't like. The other thing about this unit is it is a ground floor unit. So depending on your local building code, they may require them to insulate the slab. So this is a ground floor unit, so that means under this is most likely a concrete slab, and if they don't insulate it, then either there could be harmful environmental gases that can come up, and also the cold. So this floor is actually really cold, and so that's why I'm always wearing slippers, because it is just very cold all the time throughout the whole unit. And that's one thing that I'm not really a big fan of it. So it seems like if it's that cold, they probably did not insulate the slab. What other things? The other thing is, let me just open the door. Since this is a ground floor unit, or it's not really a ground floor unit, but it's a little bit in the ground. The thing with that concrete wall is it creates almost like a barrier. So my service is not very good when I get farther into the unit. I only get 1 bar. When I get closer to the window, I get like 2 bars. So the service is not great. That's something to keep in mind. And I'm just living by myself, so I don't have Wi-Fi. I'm working out of the place for 8 to 9, almost 10 hours a day. So including travel time, of course. And so I don't really need Wi-Fi, so I use my data. But the problem is my data doesn't work when I get far into a unit or even when I'm in the washroom. So that's a thing to keep in mind for units in the ground floor or a little bit underground. Coming into the washroom here, I just reminded myself that one thing here about the bathtub that I don't like is when you turn on the water hits the bathtub, it gets very slippery right here. And there's 2 times that I walked into it by turning on the water first, and I slipped really bad and I almost hurt myself. Luckily, I was able to catch myself. I'm a fairly young person, so I'm okay, but that would be really dangerous for younger kids or older adults. So that can be solved by maybe putting a mat right here so that when you step in, it's less slippery. But a mat, you would have to test it out. A mat could also help, but also make it more slippery as well. So you would have to figure out what works for you. And also another thing is if you put a mat there and water is always hitting on it, you're gonna have to clean it every so often. So that's another thing to think about if you were to put a mat in. What else do I have here that I'm thinking? I think that's about it. I'm trying to think what other things that I have on my list, but I think that's all I have. This unit seems very perfect, very nice, but even though it seems very nice, I still have some problems with it. Oh, another thing I actually just reminded is the control panel. The control panel is right here. It controls the electrical. I'm not a huge I don't know too much about electrical, but it should be labeled, and over here you have the labels for each breaker switch. I believe that's what it's called. But the problem I have here is it's extremely faint. I can't even see the numbers. You have to look very closely and actually concentrate to see the corresponding numbers on this. So this personally should be labeled better, and it's also labeled from opposite from this. So 3 is at the bottom and 23 is at the top. I don't know if that's standard I guess method of how they do it, but just intuitively from a person that knows nothing about it, I would rather have it start the same way that it's labeled. And if it's 3 at the bottom, then start 3 at the bottom, not 3 at the top, just so that it makes a little bit more sense to a person that knows nothing, which is me. Okay, I think that's it for this video. If you enjoyed this video, let me know, and if you have similar thoughts and comments, leave them in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching.